Great. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Print Checks and Create EFT Payments in Record Time. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today for this. There's just a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode today, and if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute you or submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will be answering questions throughout the presentation. We'll also be following up after the presentation to answer any additional questions that you may have. And as a reminder, this month's promotion communication was all about how you can free up more hours in your work week. We included some add-on applications that we found help our Dynamics GP clients achieve these results. You can visit the URL seen here for more information on those and their associated promotions they have running. So today we've invited McCorma to join us, and they'll be shedding some more light on how you can cut your employee hours devoted to printing checks and creating EFT payments with their add-on solution for GP. At this point, I would like to transition the presentation over to Aura and Angel, who are on the sales and marketing team at McCorma.
So hi everybody, and I'm very excited to be here today, and thank you very much for attending. Well, my name is Aura, and I'm the founder of McCorma, and I'm just looking forward to presenting the solution for you. The main solution that we have is for processing payments in the AP system or in the payroll system. And we're going to be focusing on AP, but pretty much almost everything that we're showing you works on payroll except for the last little piece there. The first piece of it is we're going to show you how our system adds security to your payment processing with a workflow process around checks and EFT payments. We're going to show how the system automatically archives your check documents so that it's at least for that piece of your system, it's like a very low-key kind of document management where you can access your check images after the fact right online, and therefore you don't necessarily need to store file copies and saves you a lot of time making copies. We're going to talk about microprinting and why that's an advantage, how it gives you the ability to quickly add bank accounts or make changes if you have to your bank account and immediately be up and running printing checks, and how easy it is to configure our checks. And then we're going to show you how you can control some of the selection for the checks, and I'll get more into that. And lastly, if you're the type of company that processes a lot of different check batches per week from different checking accounts, either in one Dynamics company or in many, we have a wonderful product for you that will save you lots and lots of time called multi-batch print and post, and we're going to show you that. So that's the agenda for today. And Angel, if you could go to the next slide. So, and I do want to reiterate, I like to take questions throughout the presentation. If at any point you do have a question, do try to indicate that so that we can take that. And Julie, will I have the ability to unmute people? I don't see the people, so I think you're the one that's going to unmute people if they want to speak. Is that right?
Yeah, we can do that, or they can raise their hands so that I know they want to be unmuted, or they can type in the question box and I can monitor that for you as well.
Okay, so either way that you're comfortable with to ask a question, I'm happy with, but you know, I think it's nice when it's a dialogue. Sometimes presenting these kind of webinars, for me as a presenter, it feels like I'm talking to like a blank audience, and so feel free, if you feel comfortable, to raise your hand and actually speak. I think it'll make the webinar more lively for everybody, and I would appreciate that. So, all right, so the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to walk through some conceptual slides about the secure approval workflow, and then we're going to actually show it to you in action. So the basic idea of the workflow is that you may have one or more people that put together your payments for you. They select the checks. Maybe they've even input the invoices. They're like the AP staff. But at some point, before printing checks, what this system lets you do is have an approval process on those checks. So the person, let's say, that's put the check batch together, generally from the AP department, in this scenario, that would be the person on the far right called Ryan, he's created a batch of checks and he wants to print it, but before he prints it, he has to make a request for approval. So we'll show you how that's done, but this is just the conceptual part. So he can make a request for approval. Now, the next person in line we have is the approver, and it could be more than one. So in this scenario, we have Karen as an approver, and she's going to receive a request by either email or text and know that there's something to approve, and she can then go into a navigation list in GP and look at what's there and approve it. And the other piece of the concept regarding how the workflow works is you can configure I'm going to skip all the way over to the left. You can configure if there's one or two approvers, you can configure conditions for those approvers so that in this case, they always want one approver. It doesn't matter how big the check is. But you could configure it with a threshold, and I'll show you a scenario like that in a couple minutes, where some checks can get printed without approval if you want, or some checks could require two approvers. So that's that. And then signatures, that's the last piece, because part of the whole beauty of it is then the checks could come out with signatures, but you've had an auditable approval trail that makes that safe, and it saves the time with the signature, so then the checks come out with signatures. So that's one possible scenario for the approval system. All right, I'm ready for the next slide. So this is basically how it works. Ryan creates a batch of payments, and he goes to print, and it does one. And it says, it gives him the choice to request approval, so he can request approval. So now the batch is locked, meaning that no one can edit any of the transactions once it's in the approval system, and no one can add any transactions or take any transactions away. An email was sent to Karen waiting for her. So now on the third piece of it, she reviews everything and approves the payments. She may reject some of the payments. So if she does reject some of the payments, moving over to the green, it shows that the rejected payments will get moved to a rejected batch and will not be able to be printed. And then a message is sent to Ryan if some are rejected, and a message is sent to Ryan saying if some are approved. So he knows that he can go and deal with it. And then the last step for the approved ones is he will print them in the blue section. And they'll come out, in this case, with their signature. Okay? So at this point, Angel, let me get your take on this. Should we show a little demo first, or do you generally go through the rest of the concepts?
I will go through this concept as well, and then you can just demo one.
Okay, we're just going to demo one. Okay, so I've done this a lot of times, but we just changed our demo data around, so that's why I wanted to ask for that advice. All right, so the next piece of it is we have another feature on top of that, which is called split batch. So in a split batch scenario, I already kind of mentioned that you could have some checks that, let's say, they don't require approval. In this case, on the far left over under the big check mark on the approvers column, it's showing the rules that we're going to, and this is the piece we're going to demo. We'll demo this scenario. So in this scenario, you have a threshold of $2,000. And under $2,000, you're going to say, let my APA clerk go ahead and print them without approval. I'm okay with that. And over $2,000, we're going to require approval. So go ahead to the next slide. So in this step, the workflow is just a little bit different. Ryan, so we're up at the question mark in the upper left side. Ryan creates a batch and requests approval. But at that point, what the system does is it says some of your checks are under $2,000 and can be printed without approval, so they're kept in the same batch. But it says some of the checks require approval, so a new batch is made with just the checks that need approval. Going down to the bottom, that email is sent to Karen talking about that second batch and saying go ahead and you need to approve a batch. The rest of that flow is all the same along the bottom. And then going back up to the top, the original batch now just has the checks that are under $2,000, and the system allows Ryan to go ahead and print them without waiting for approval. Okay, so that's what we're going to be demonstrating. All right, and let's go on to the demo. Yeah, good. So the first thing is I want to show you how that looks in our security screen. We're going to go into the McClellan Maker security screen. And this is showing how we have, let's see how I want to go through this. I guess the first thing is we have our security set up by user ID. And what that means is, so we have 3 different security models, and I'm really going to focus on this one today. So the security model where the system set up by user ID is what's needed in order to use the approval workflow system. And what it means is that the way your authentication is done is because each person in the system is a GP user and they have to log into GP. So once you're if you're logged into this GP system as Ryan, then everything on this screen that applies to Ryan will be in effect. And the system will go through these steps. And it doesn't require any additional passwords or anything. It's based on your login to GP. So that's what security by user ID means. And then you can see that there's 3 users configured, Karen, Megan, and Ryan. So we're concerned with Karen and Ryan for this demo. So Ryan is the approver. Go ahead and click on Ryan. And what it shows is that Ryan is in the system, but he's not authorized to actually approve anything. That's why his maximum authorized amount is 0. But he is authorized to certain checkbooks. Okay, and so it shows on the right side that he has 6 out of 7 checkbooks that he's allowed to use. Okay. Now Karen, go ahead and click on Karen. Karen is set up with an unlimited approval amount and her signature and all the checkbooks. And we're going to go and look a little further at how she's set up. So click into Karen. And so on this subscreen, this is where you could set up that Karen has a signature and what her maximum approval amount is, and the fact that she wants to be notified by email or by text. And that's how she's set up. So that's the scenario we have. Now, on top of those users, we have a threshold, which is over on the right side. So signature threshold for $2,000. And then we have some logic associated with that. And the logic says we want to require passwords. And what we mean by that is approvers. In our lingo, a password is like an approver, although they've already logged into GP. They don't need to put an additional password. But we're going to require 1 approver if over the threshold and none if under the threshold. So checks over $2,000 require approval. And then we're going to print signatures, always 1 signature. So Angel, just for a minute, click on the list, yeah, that one. So this shows you that you have various options for requiring approvers. Always 1, always 2, 1 if over a threshold, or 2 if over a threshold. So that gives you some flexibility. And if you have a specific scenario as I demo, this, I invite you to write it down, and that would be a great opportunity to raise your hand after I've gone through the basic demo, because we like to work with real-life examples. And when we do, like, a lot of times we'll do a one-on-one consultation session with a prospective client where we ask a lot about your process and your business, and then tell you exactly how you configure this so that it meets your own compliance requirements and so on. Anyway, in terms of signatures, the list looks like this. You can print with no signatures, or it can always have signatures, or it can have signatures based on the threshold. So you can see the various options there. So there's lots of creative ways to work with these to meet a lot of different scenarios. I've even had people have it where they want checks that come out signed under a certain amount and unsigned over a certain amount, so that they can still have yet another level of approval where somebody has to manually sign. So there's various levels. All right. I think let's see, the only other thing that I want to point out on the screen, yeah, there is the workflow options are checked, and so we're demoing with those on, and I think these days that a lot of people like to use that. And then the EFT security, direct deposit and EFT security. So what that means is that everything that we're seeing here applies both to checks and to electronic fund ACH payments. Okay, so even if most of your batches are turning to electronic, there's still a lot of benefits to using the security system. All right, so go ahead and close that. And now we're going to show the example. We have a batch that's ready. And I want to show you what's in the batch. We have a preview report that you can use to see the checks that are in that batch. Okay, so we have 3 checks in the batch. 2 of them are over $2,000, and 1 of them is under $2,000. So that's what we expect to see for this scenario as we go through it. Okay. So now notice that what you would normally see, the button that Angel just move that window just a little bit. The button that we can't see it anymore. Oh well. On the payables check screen, instead of saying print checks, which is the normal button where the clear is right now, it said request approval. Okay, so Ryan was blocked from actually printing the checks. Now when he clicked that, he went over here and he's saying the system is telling him that telling us that the batch was split. We have test split now contains 1 transaction that does not need approvers. And we have a new batch called test split-A1 that contains 2 transactions that need 1 approval. Okay, so go ahead and click OK. And it shows it's just the remaining 1 check that was under $2,000. And Ryan can go ahead and print that, so go ahead and print that. And we have it set up with the PDF printer because it's a demo. You know, that obviously would just go right to the printer, but we want to show you what it looks like. So this is the check that we just printed. And it did print with Karen's signature because that's how the system is configured to use the signature for the checks under $2,000. And there it is. And it has the NICR line. So I'll take you, I don't know, some of you may or may not be familiar with the concept of NICR check printing. So just very briefly, this is where you can use blank check stock, and our system actually prints everything that you see here on the check. So it's going to print the signature line, the signature, the boxes around the date, all the lines that you see. This particular example doesn't have a logo, but if you go up, you can put logos in there, like there's a space for it up there. And then the MICR line itself, which is the funky numbers and symbols that are used to code the check. And we printed all that. So that would show up on your blank check stock, and then you would send it off. All right. So now what happens? So Karen should have gotten an email saying that she needs to approve the check. So let's take a look at that. And this is saying you have this, we have a batch that needs approval. So now Karen's like, okay, let me go look at it. And so we have two GP sessions going on here. On this one, we're logged in as Karen, and she's going to go to her purchasing batches pending approval list that we added to the system. And that shows one batch. Now she doesn't want to just approve it, she wants to drill down into it. She can go to the drill down, and that's going to show her what's in it. So she has two checks. If she goes and clicks on either of the checks, she can see what that check contains, okay? And so over on the right-hand side, it's showing which vouchers are on the checks. It could have 20 vouchers on each check. It's whatever was selected for that example. Okay, so in this case, let's say that for whatever reason she wants to reject one of them. She's going to go ahead and reject the second one there. There's a reject button up at the top. Okay, she can put her reason. So this is her way to communicate with Ryan what's wrong, and she can tell Ryan what to do in order to get the check through the system. Okay, and so that one's gone. That's not in the batch anymore. That's gone to make a reject batch. And now she can now approve the remaining transactions in the batch. So we do that. The final approval there is at the batch level. So everything that's left gets approved. Okay, that's cool. So now Ryan has gotten notified to that effect, and he's going back into the system, and he's going to pull up the ones that are approved, and there they are, just the one for this case, and now I can go ahead and print them. And it's that simple. And if it's a check batch, so then, hold on one second. So what happens for checks is you get that second window there to post, and that's when Ryan would look, well, this is just normal check processing in Dynamics, where he would make sure that the check's printed properly and go ahead and post. If it was EFTs, it would send the email remittances and go through all the normal processing that you do in GP for those types of batches. Okay. And in the meanwhile, so now there's a batch called MICR reject. With that other one transaction, he can edit that batch. He can move that transaction to his own new batch. You can never post the MICR reject batch or print it. It's a special batch that we put just to hold rejected transactions. But he can go and find the transaction. He can move it to another batch of his choice, and he can fix it, whatever Karen asked him to do. So that's the basics of the approval workflow. I don't see any questions on the panel, so I'm going to keep going. The last little piece is I want to show you that there is an audit trail for that. So if we go back into the security, there's an audit log report. And this is really what's going to make the system, make your auditors really happy. Because for every check batch, they can see what the batch was, when it was printed, who printed, and who approved. And how many transactions, and they can drill into that to see the actual checks, a little bit of information about who was paid and so on. So it's very helpful. Okay. The other piece of it is the checks that we printed are archived on the system. So if we go into the inquiry screen and we inquire on either of those vendors, or on any other transaction, we can go in, and when we drill into the actual transaction, in addition to the normal dynamics information, we also get McCormick information, which is an actual check copy. So as you can see, it's a copy, not the actual check, right? It's voided, there's no MICR line, there's no signature, but it's a check copy that's been archived with everything exactly like it was printed. And then the audit trail itself that shows, again, who printed and approved and so on, what time it was printed. Okay? So that's the check inquiry. So, all right, let's go back to the slides. So just to sum up, as I mentioned, the Dynamics GP credentials are used for approval on the audit log, meaning that whoever you're logged in as on GP is enough to authenticate you for our system. And the security is for checks and ACH. And the last point here I haven't said yet. So this is very interesting. I'm going to draw this out a little bit. We actually can have the same threshold rules that you saw. Those can vary by vendor class. Now, how would you use that? There's two really good examples. You may have a certain vendor class that you want to protect extra special. For example, employee reimbursements. You may want to have extra control around that so that people can't cut themselves checks. You might want to say all employee reimbursements require approval. You can't print any without approval. Okay, so then you can set up all your employees in that vendor class and set that rule, even though for the majority of your checks, you may say that under $2,000 you don't need approval. That's one example. Another good example would be, let's say that you have certain checks where you know that they're going to be varying amounts every month and they don't really need approval, like your rent check, your utility bills. You don't care how much they are, you expect them monthly, and you're going to let them print without approval. Again, you can set them up in a vendor class for recurring payments, let's say, and set them up with that kind of rule, or maybe a very high threshold, like $30,000 or something. Okay, and there's probably other ways to use it too. All right, next slide. So check image archiving. I showed you one way that we do archiving already. The other thing that you can set up is we actually have a way to set up a PDF check archive. So we can automatically save PDF copies of your check on a hard drive outside the system. Again, it's just check copies like what I showed you a minute ago, but it's individual files with each check, and they're named in a way that you can kind of configure a little bit with things like the vendor name, checkbook and ID, date, and so on, check number. It's good if you need an offline copy for some reason, meaning outside of Dynamics, and in particular could be used if you have a document management system that's external that you want to load them into, and so on. So, but it's an optional feature. If you don't want to use the hard drive space for that, you just don't configure it. All right, next slide, please. This is referring to the one that I showed you. The images that are stored inside of GP are stored in SQL, and they're not PDF files, and they include the audit log. I showed you this already. So let's click on to the next slide, please. All right, configurator. The next piece of what I am going to show you, the purpose of this is just how easy it is to set up your checks with our system and to change them. So I explained the concept that you have a blank check stock, and on that you're going to be we're going to be printing everything. We're going to take you into our configurator to show you how that works. So the good thing is our system comes pre-configured with quite a lot of different formats, different column layouts for the check stub, and so it's like a library. And so you can pick an existing format to start with, and so just pick one. And then based on that, you can make changes to it. So an example of a good change would be you want to add your company logo. So we're moving to make room for it, and then we go ahead and we add a picture to the check, and we pull in our logo. And it's all very intuitive, as long as, and we'll help you out with anything you need. If there's something that you don't find, but it's drag and drop and resize, and everything is pretty straightforward. As you can see, you can easily we have a lot of alignment options. We have a lot of options for making sure that the spacing looks good. You can use the properties on the left-hand side to change fonts and so on. Click on font. There's a lot of selections for changing the character type and size and so on. So I won't go into too much detail more because it's pretty straightforward. And the other piece of it is we have the concept of regions. So the check region is one region, and then the stub region is another region, and so the whole region is kind of like a grouping where you can reposition as a whole that region. Let's see. Angel, if you just click somewhere in the middle of that region on a field, and you can I just wanted to show how you can move that around as a group. Okay, so it was easy for us to create variants in our library where the check's on the top or in the middle or on the bottom. Very easy to create these things. Okay, the other piece of it is, as you can see on this, and yes, to get an easier view of that. Okay, good. As you can also see, there's no actual signature showing here in the file. The signature and the signature lines are something called logical fields. By logical fields means that whether they print or not can be controlled by the logic that we set up that I showed you a few minutes ago. So the system is smart enough to know to bring the signature in when it should and to not bring it in when it shouldn't, and it's pulling it out of the database the way it's been configured in. So if you saw Karen had her signature in there, it's encrypted in SQL, very secure, and it's not stored here in the format. And when it prints, the system figures out if it should print or not and pulls it in and prints if it's appropriate. Okay, I think that's it on the configurator, unless we see any hands raised or questions. And stay on the screen for a minute. So this is the Micker. This is where you set up the whole bank account for the check printing. And the point I want to make on this is, I briefly mentioned it before, one of the key benefits of this system is that you can so quickly set up your new checking accounts for Micker printing. So you get a new account, you just come in here, configure the maker line, fill out the check format, probably one you're already using for another account, and you are good to go. It's done. You know, you may have to give security access to it. That's it. You know, very, very simple. Or, you know, for some reason you had to cancel one account because there was some fraudulent activity, or you decided to change banks, or you decided to move your office. I mean, these are all reasons why something might change. You could see, depending on the situation, you either just start a new account here, or you go into the layout or actually on Dynamics, you change your office address. It automatically prints. You don't even have to change anything on ours for that specific example. Very, very straightforward. All right, we can go out of that. So of all of the topics from the beginning of there were 5 topics. We've covered secure approval workflow, check image archiving, and the maker printing, the concept of that. Now we're going to talk about invoice selection tools. And we have 2 tools that come with the system, and 1 tool that we use through our custom development department that I'll just briefly mention. The 2 tools that come with the system is, the first one is called Select Vendors by Checkbook ID. So Angel, can you go over to the Select Checks screen? So most people, to create their payment batches, will start with Select Checks. Some people don't use it, but most people will start with Select Checks. When you go to start a batch, you put in a batch ID. Just put in one like demo, something like that. I want to show this concept, yeah. And it's at this point where you tell the system what checkbook goes with the batch. So basically, what if you have the need to pay your different vendors by different checkbooks? Okay. Now in Dynamics, there's a place in Dynamics to configure a checkbook for a vendor. Did you know that? You can go over to the vendor card and show them that. So this actually is already existing in Dynamics, so that you can configure a checkbook for your vendor. But the only problem is the system doesn't do anything with that data. Very interesting. So we actually automated it. So if you have a vendor that has a specific checkbook assigned to it, under the options, First Bank, okay, you may have some vendors configured under First Bank, some vendors configured under other checkbook IDs. Now, if you go into Select Checks, we can close this up, and you've configured your batch with whatever batch it is, First Bank, let's say. I'm not going to actually, okay, save that. Now we're back in Select Checks. Now on the little checkbox screen that disappeared behind the other screen, I think it's disappeared behind Dynamics main screen. Yep. All right, so this pops up. So, you know, when you're doing a normal process, you'll see this screen. You say select vouchers by vendor checkbook ID. Now when you go and do that Select Checks, it's only going to select the vouchers for vendors that have the same checkbook ID as this batch. Okay, so that's the whole feature. That is very useful. Okay. Okay. Excellent. So back to the slides. So building on that concept, and even more granular way that some people need to do it is some companies need each voucher paid by a different checkbook ID. And it's not necessarily by vendor. It could be that you're paying the same vendor, but depending on what voucher it is, you may need a different checkbook ID. A really good example of that would be if you, let's say you're managing money for a bunch of people or a bunch of companies, maybe paying bills for other people, and you need to pay it out of different checkbooks, even though some of them are paying the same vendors like FedEx or whoever. So you can go ahead and we have a way of coding your vouchers to indicate what checkbook they should be paid out of. So go ahead and flip back over there, and we'll just show how you would code a voucher. So we have an additional menu, and you can pop up that screen, and you put in your voucher and assign a checkbook to the voucher. Okay, and then the same thing holds with the, we won't go through the whole scenario, but it's the exact same thing. When you're on the select checks and you choose to only select vouchers that were coded with a certain checkbook ID, then that's how it'll work. It'll only select those vouchers. Okay. And then the last invoice selection tool that I'll mention is if you have a very complex selection criteria, we do have a way of customizing that. And so I don't really have anything to show you because that's very specific to each company. But we do have a way of creating advanced invoice selection, but that would be through our custom development department. So that's really all I want to say about that. All right. All right, if there's no questions, then I'm going to go on, and we're going to go on to the last agenda item, and this is called multi-batch print and post. And the purpose of this product is to make it easy to work with lots and lots of batches. So, yep, I'm going to go ahead and just bring it right up so you can see. The different company setup. So the scenario we're going to show you is where the user actually has 3 different companies, and each company might have multiple check batches. And they have a day called check printing day that before having our product, was giving them, nightmares because they had to sit and deal with all these batches. Then they got multi-batch print and post and could relax a little bit more. So this is what the window looks like. It shows all the different batches. It shows which companies they're from, and it shows what their status is. So if you're using this with the approval workflow, it'll show whether the batch is ready to print and so on. You don't have to use it with the approval workflow. You can use it if you don't have the workflow on, then they'll all show ready to print, but you'll have to know procedurally if they're really ready or not. And what this system lets you do is go ahead and select usually all of them. You can say select all of them, of course only the ones that are ready. We're just going to select a few. I mean, this is only 6, so that's fine. So, and then once we're ready, we're going to click process, but I'm going to explain a couple things first here. So Angel's showing you the EFT remittance option. So the point I want to make here is that, again, this product also works both with regular check printing batches as well as electronic payment batches. And so here we give you a few ways to tell the system if you're going to actually print any documents, if you're going to automatically email remittances. And the other nice thing that it can do is if it's an ACH batch that's emailing remittances, then it doesn't need to stop to make sure that things printed properly because it's not printing anything, and it can automatically post the batch and generate the EFT file. Those are options that you have, and that's the recommended way to use it. For check batches, it has to stop after printing and then let you make sure they all printed properly and there were no jams, and then it gives you a similar window like this again to go ahead and post. So that's what we're going to show you. The other thing is email notifications. It says after this process is done, it's going to let us know that it's done. So that way it could run on a back office computer or whatever, on a remote desktop sharing session or some other way. It doesn't really tie up your system because you can do other work while it's going. You just can't work in that GP session while it's going. It has to control that GP session. So you may go off and work in Microsoft Word and Outlook and all kinds of other systems, and this way you get notified when this is done. And Angel, you want to show the batches with error status? I saw you go to that a couple times. I don't know if it's actually showing the error status. Like if you unclick it, it'll only show the ready to print batches. Okay. All right. So now we're going to click process, and you'll see it works. And it's kind of fun. You can actually watch its progress. It's actually going to go and process each batch as if a human. It's automating all of the steps that you would do manually. And the beauty of that is we didn't try to reverse engineer dynamics to make this work. We used everything standard, so that protects your data and make sure that everything, that everything's done in the normal way. It is going to be able to log in and out of each company to go and process those batches. And if anything were ever to unexpected were to happen, it's only going to be, how do I say that? It's only the same. It's going to handle it the same way that if you were manually processing, you could handle it. So nothing can really go wrong. The other thing is all the standard dynamic security laws are obeyed. Everything else that you have in your system that's just normal. And it's going to keep popping through this until it's done, and then it'll come back to a screen allowing you to post. I had a client telling me that it actually saved them 75% of their time on this payment process. And I had another company tell me that they had so many batches, they literally had somebody working to print checks full time. That's all they did. All right, so we returned back to the screen, and they're all gone. And if we go to the screen to post, there they are, ready to post. And if we click them on, you'd see the same thing happen again, but just for posting, it's very similar. Okay. So that is really it for the presentation. I would love to invite you to ask any questions that you have, or if you want to talk to us one-on-one, we're happy to do the consultative demo with you as to how these products work in your own scenarios. And I'm so glad that you joined us today. Any questions?
All right, thanks so much, Aura. I don't see anything that has come through yet, but we can hang out for just a minute here to see if anybody wants to jump in with any questions.
Great.
All right, we actually do have one question from, looks like Kristen. Says, does the send document and email option send to the actual vendor or only to the contact under the email notifications window? All right, does anybody else want to jump in here?
Oh, I'm sorry. Aura, are you still on the line?
Yeah, for some reason it dropped me and I dialed right back in.
Oh, okay. We did have one question.
Oh,
Please
okay,
read that
sorry.
question again.
Yeah, it just said, does the send document and email option send to the actual vendor or only to the contact under the email notifications window?
I'm sorry, I could not. I need you to go a little bit slower, please.
Okay. It was just a question about the send document and email option, if it sends to the actual vendor or only to the contact name in the email notifications window.
When you send, oh, you're talking about for the MPP. I'm kind of confused. I need a little bit more dialogue on that one because there's different places where the system sends email.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if they're referring to the approval workflow or if they're referring to MPP or if they're referring to electronic fund transfer remittances.
Okay, with that one, we can get you in touch with them after the presentation here.
Oh, okay, are they not on the line anymore?
Let me see here.
Maybe they can unmute and then I can hear the screen that they're talking about.
All right. Yeah, we do have some questions in the box. Can you see the question box, Angel and Aura?
No, I don't
unmute.
see questions.
Christian, I just unmuted you if you want to jump in here.
Yeah, hi. I was curious, when you're in the multi-batch posting and printing window, down in the bottom left-hand corner, there was the email documents option. My question is, does that send an email actually to the vendor, or does that send an email just to the person in the next window over under email notifications where it says angel@mccorma.com?
Okay, no. So on the far left where it says send document and email, okay, that's what you're referring to. What that's saying is that you're telling the system you want to use the Dynamics GP setup for sending email remittances to vendors. Okay, and we piggyback on top of the existing setup, and then where you can tell Dynamics for each vendor, you know, who to send it to and so on. It's a whole setup. I'm not showing it to you because it's standard part of Dynamics, but we'd be happy to help and support you with it if it's not something you're familiar with. But if you use ACH already and you use electronic remittances, then you already have a setup where the vendors have emails associated with them and you tell it where to send your EFT remittances. And that's telling the system to use that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I would be interested in more support. We do currently use the ACH module, and we're manually sending email remittances to all of our vendors. So
Oh, wow.
it is something that I would appreciate some more support on or documentation if possible.
Awesome. Well, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Lisa, I just unmuted you as well if you want to jump in with your question here.
Okay, we have the micropayables already, and we use it definitely for the check printing. I don't think we knew about this multi-company function, and is it possible that within the security it's just not set up to allow it?
Oh, I'm so glad you're asking that question. I should have made that more clear in the presentation. That's my bad. So everything I showed on my first 4 agenda items is part of the McCormick Micro product, but the 5th thing that I covered, which is called multi-batch print and post, that's actually a separate module that we sell. So we only came out with that a year or so ago, and so it's pretty new. And that's why people that, we're trying to get the word out to existing clients. But so that's why you don't know about it.
So is it just called multi-batch print and post? Is it what is it referred to as?
That's the name that we give it. So like if you were on our website, you'd be able to see the product under that name, multi-batch print and post.
Great.
And
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. We had one more question from Sabrina. Sabrina, if you want to jump in here as well. Sabrina asked if the EFT payment actually sends to the bank or if you have to, she doesn't have a mic, so if we could just go through. She asked if the EFT payment actually sends to the bank, or do you still have to sign on the bank to process the EFT payment?
Yeah, I believe you still have to sign on the bank to do the EFT payment, and this will just get to the point of generating the EFT file itself. I'm not 100% sure on that because I do know that there's a way to configure the bake send in Dynamics, I believe. But that's what I remember hearing about this, that we get to the point of generating the files, but you still have to send them. I can check on that. Julie, can I get, can I send you that information so you can send it out to maybe other people have that question too? So
sure, no
that
problem.
way you can send it out to the callers. Okay. I'll verify that. I believe that you do have to send it to the bank.
Okay, great. All right, it looks like that's all the questions that we have. But if anyone else wants to jump in here real quick, we do have a couple more minutes. All right, I don't see anything else coming in. So if you guys do think of any other questions, feel free to reach out to us associates or also to Angel or Aura at McCormick, and we will get those answered for you. So thanks again, Angel and Aura, for your presentation today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Angel, for running the show over there.